Hello, welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got a Sunday video for you today, and we're going to be talking about 7 shooting mistakes made within the shooting phase. Now before getting into the video, of course, if you have yet to subscribe to the channel, please do so down below, and also check out our membership area if you haven't done so already. Right, let's get into number 1, and I've gone with not declaring all your weapons. Now I see this in quite a lot of my games. So a couple of examples of what I'm talking about here is a model that's got multiple weapons, such as a Space Marine Redemptor Dreadnought. It's got a lot of different weapons. Before firing it, you need to declare where each and every weapon is going to be going. And the same applies if you've got multiple models within the same unit, such as your Locust Destroyers, because maybe you're going to be split firing them. You can't be deciding after you've taken a few shots that you're going to actually change up your targets. Now if you actually look in the core rules, in the shooting phase, you'll literally see this spelled out. When a unit shoots, you must select the target units for all of the range weapons its models are making attacks with before any attacks are resolved. Then it goes on to explain how you split fire and whatnot, but you must declare what you're doing beforehand, and there is a reason for this, because in theory all the weapons are shot at the same time. So if you do declare one single unit with all the weapons and some of those weapons go to waste because the unit's been destroyed, well, that's on you. So you need to declare your weapons and try and think about them before actually doing it. Let's get on to number 2, and it's the wrong weapon order. So I'm going to try and explain this one with another example. I've got some Custodes here, and one of the models within the unit has only got 1 wound remaining. I'm going back into that Space Marine Codex. This time I've got an Invicta Warsuit, which has a lot of different weapon profiles. It's got damage 1, damage 2, damage 3, all sorts of different weapon profiles that can be fired at this Custodes unit. This is also a mistake I'm seeing quite often, whereas a player isn't thinking about what weapons they should be using first. Now if there's a model that's only got 1 wound remaining in that unit, and you do want to use all your weapons against this targeted unit, ideally what you want to be doing is using your 1 damage weapons first. There's no point putting a 3 damage weapon into this. Once it does go through the armor and they've failed their save, that 3 damage is going onto a 1 wounded model, and that extra damage is completely lost. So let's take this example further. Let's say that that model has now been destroyed, and there's a second model that's actually got 2 wounds remaining. Again, using this Invicta Warsuit, you're now going to start using your 2 damage weapons. Now of course this is a very specific example, not all units are going to have all different kind of damage weapons, but I just wanted to make the example as clear as possible that you've got to think about your weapons before actually using them. Number 3, not using the shortest range weapons first. Now this one, I think most of us have made this mistake while playing 40k at some point in our lives, not using the shortest range weapon first. So here we've got some Tyranid Gargoyles, and we've also got some Orc Burner Boys looking to fry these Tyranid creatures. We've also got a Dakka Jet flying in around the air. Now the obvious mistake here would be to be firing the Dakka Jet first. Let's say you did do that mistake and you fired the Dakka Jet first into the Gargoyles, completely removed those Gargoyles from play. You've now left your Burner Boys with no target because they've only got a 12-inch range. They've got one of the shortest range weapons that you've got. Now they're completely out of range of any target. So very simply what you need to be doing is firing with your Burner Boys first. If you do remove those Gargoyles, then the Dakka Jet is free to fire at something completely different. Simples. Right, before getting into number 4, let me just get the sponsor out the way, which is the Magnet Baron. If you don't know who the Magnet Baron is, basically it's an online magnet store for all your 40k needs. In fact, it isn't just 40k, it's Age of Sigmar and all the other tabletop games. They provide magnets, which is going to make transportation of your models to your games much more safer. So check out the Magnet Baron, the link will be down in the description below. Give them a visit. Right, let's get on to number 4. Number 4, I've gone with selecting the incorrect targets. Now this one is kind of similar to one of the previous entries we've got in this video, but I'll explain why it's a little bit different. So here we've got some Lich Guard from the familiar Necron Codex. Now they've got the War Signs, which are damage 2 weapons. Now we've also got some Blight Lord Terminators from the Death Guard Codex. So we're in a battle with the Death Guard, we've got damage 2 weapons. Going up against these Death Guard Terminators, is this the correct play here? And the answer simply is no. And actually it's for 2 different reasons. First of all, Terminator models have got 3 wounds apiece. So it's going to take 2 attacks from your War Scythes to go through, which would actually be 4 damage, but one of those damage is going to go completely to waste. And there's actually a secondary reason, specifically for the Death Guard. They've actually got the Disgusting Resilient ability, which is a -1 to all damage taken. So in fact, taking these damage 2 War Scythes and trying to go up against those Blight Lord Terminators is probably not the right way to go about it. You're paying the points for these elite weapons and they're only doing 1 damage. You can also flip reverse this as well. Let's take these 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers, again from the Necron Codex. What they should be firing at is vehicles and monsters because their damage is 3d3. That's a buttload of damage averaging 6 every time one goes through. Going up against your opponent's biggest and best units is probably the best way to go. If you're playing Eldari, those Wave Serpents, or maybe a Wraith Lord. What you don't want to be doing is firing this weapon into a unit of Guardians. There's absolutely no point throwing away all that damage. This one isn't as common because I think it's quite obvious. Don't be throwing damage 3d3 into 1 wound models, but I have seen it done in the past. Number 5, not understanding averages. Now believe it or not, there's a lot of maths involved with 40k. Now not everybody plays with averages, they just like to roll dice and have fun, but it's always best to work out roughly what a unit is capable of doing. I'm going to take another example from the Necron Codex here. I've got 20 Necron warriors and they're equipped with the Gorse Reapers. These are Assault 2, Strength 5, -2 AP, 1 damage. Now that would make 40 shots which are hitting on a 3+, that averages 26.7 hits. That's without any buffs, any bonuses, so you already know roughly what you're going to achieve there. You can then take this further, going up against the toughnesses. So going up against toughness 3 to 4, you're averaging 17.8 wounds. Going up against toughness 5, 13.3 wounds, and going up against toughness 6 right up to toughness 9, you're averaging around 8.9 wounds. Now don't get me wrong, this is a dice game after all. You're not going to get bang on the average every time. Maybe with your 40 shots you roll 46s. It literally can happen. It is a dice game after all. But when you look at other games such as poker for example, the best poker players in the world always work out their pot odds before actually placing their bets. And it's very similar to averages in the 40k game. On to number 6, we've got Misunderstanding Terrain. Now to be fair with this one, terrain can be quite complicated, especially if you're a beginner to the 40k game. I mean, you've got ruins, which could mean all sorts of different things. You've then got trees and woods, you've then got light cover, you've then got dense cover, you've got obscuring terrain, you've then got scalable terrain, there's plenty more breachable. There's loads of different terrain features and traits within the game itself. Now the best advice in terms of terrain is basically before the game actually begins or before you start to deploy, always talk to your opponent and agree on what each and every terrain feature is actually going to be. I think this one is really key here. In fact, from game to game, different opponents have completely different ways of actually playing terrain, which I kind of find a little bit weird because the rules are there, but everybody reads the rules in a different sense, or maybe they try and benefit from the terrain features differently for their faction. Who knows? But I would just suggest getting into the core rulebook and learning the terrain traits because they are quite important, and if you start firing at a unit within terrain or you're attempting to target something that's behind obscuring terrain and you've not realised it is obscuring terrain, it's going to severely give you a setback within your game. Then finally on to number 7, we've got Worsening your charge move. This one's quite a common one. You've got your model and the only targetable enemy unit at range is the one that's the closest one to you sometimes. And you think, you know what, I'm going to throw some pop shots at the unit, maybe get rid of 1 or 2 before I make that charge move. This would be a severe mistake. This happens in quite a lot of games. You end up taking a few shots and you end up killing a few models, but what your opponent is going to do is take from the front. They're not going to take from the back. So maybe where you've got a relatively safe 6-inch charge, 7-8-inch charge, all of a sudden this could be a 9, 10, 11-inch charge, and now all of a sudden you're very likely to fail it, which means you were better off just not targeting them at all, or trying to at least target a completely different unit if you could. So guys, that's 7 common mistakes in the shooting phase. Let me know if you've got any extras to add to this list down in the comments below. Guys, all that's left to say is thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.